and actually the co-founder of something called attachment-based family therapy. This is, for me as a practicing family therapist and individual therapist, family therapy for some reason in my mind is extremely undervalued and underutilized, and I'm hoping today to find out how we can sort of revitalize family therapy. I think it's just a big mistake to not see a individual in the context of a system, because that's where he came from. We all came from a system, whether you believe it or not, right? We came from a system, and we're all part of systems on some level. And I've had actually, interestingly, even coworkers come in to therapy together, to try to work on relationships that are happening. And that's another form of a system. It may not be a family system, but it's a system nonetheless. So systems, excuse me, really play a great role in who we are and how and why we operate the way we do. And while Guy and his co-founder, somebody, Suzanne Levy, is it?
Mhm.
Are not the creators of the idea that there's a concept called a system, but I think that the contribution of attachment-based family systems, which sort of, I guess, merges attachment theory with systems theory, is a really, really valuable no-brainer and something that we should all be adding to our repertoire and our way of thinking about how individuals operate. So, Guy, thank you very much for agreeing to join us
Mhm.
today so easily and just being so easy about it. I appreciate that. It tells me a
Yeah.
lot about you. Um, Tell us a little bit about first how you came across this. How did you and Suzanne come up with this concept, and then we'll talk a little bit about what it is.
Yeah. So I was actually fortunate enough to be a student of Howard Little, who's really the originator of multidimensional family therapy, of which I honor greatly and take many roots from. But we were doing work with families, in a more traditional structural kind of way. But every once in a while felt like, the anger in the room didn't match the problem we were talking about. We're sort of talking about a messy room or not coming to the dinner table or doing homework, but it had a ferociousness to it that was just felt like World War II. And I think back then we started thinking like and saying in the therapy, like what is going on? Like what's behind all that anger? What is I know there are behavior problems, but the emotion is so over the top. And I think we started looking for more thematic, interpersonal wor problems with a family and, started to find that arguments over behavioral things were really just the front of arguments over emotional things, over relational things. So the kid is acting out and having problems, and then it turns out the divorce happened 6 months ago, and nobody's talking about the divorce. Everyone's talking about the kid getting up in the morning and going to school. And while this kid internally is reeling from my family's fallen apart, my father's disappeared, and these more interpersonal conflicts are not being addressed. Death of a parent, divorce, marital conflict, parental psychopathology or illness, uh, illness of a sibling. We've all had cases where the kid comes in who's 16 and you find out that the problem is this 6-year-old brother is autistic and sucking up all the energy of these parents.
Mhm.
And the 16-year-old feels neglected, abandoned, ignored. And yet no one addresses those. The family never thinks that might be something worth talking about. So it was really kind of observations of our families that pushed us into this realm. And then we started to use attachment theory as a way to explain what this dimension was So it's definitely interpersonal, but we started to see it more as really attachment failures or misattunement by parents or, empathic missed opportunities, and started to move towards attachment theory, which really, for those of you that end up reading in the literature, it really offers a family systems framework that is much more clinically relevant than general systems theory or cybernetics, or even for me, some of the postmodern and narrative. While these theories were helpful in moving from individuals to the interaction of people in a system, they didn't offer much of a language in therapy. Cybernetics is really a theory about missile projections and how when the target moves, the missile adjusts, and there's this feedback loop between target and missile so that the missile can fall. I mean, nobody would say that in therapy. Your husband's missile is projecting at you. But attachment theory, you know, feeling loved, feeling valued, feeling understood, having parents be parents and take care of you rather than kid being parent or parent being absent. And so it really provided a kind of landscape and language to think about it. And the deeper you read into attachment theory, it is quite well developed in its thinking about parental functioning, child development, the interaction of these things, and really offered us a rich framework for thinking about family life.
Okay. So
I'd say one more piece
yeah.
that I often like to think. Family therapy has always sort of struggled with, is there an individual or is there only the system? And in the early models, there was a lot of, we don't think about individual psychology. We only think about the way parents interact with each other and interact with their kids. And it was kind of an anti internal psychodynamic thinking about families. That changed with narrative therapy. When narrative therapy came in, it was sort of a return to psychology, people's internal stories and how that shaped their behavior. But as Mnuchin said, that movement towards narrative work sort of lost the interactional dimension. Stopped thinking about, Mnuchin once said, where's the family therapy in narrative therapy? Because it's not focusing on how people interact, it's focusing on internal attributions and storylines. And so attachment theory really provides both. It thinks about the internal, working models, emotion regulation, psychological needs, but it still sees the interaction between people as where the internal world gets shaped.
Hmm.
So how a parent attends to a kid's need impacts how a kid starts to feel about himself and see other people. So my inner psychology is shaped by my interactions, and then as my psychology emerges, it starts to
Hmm.
influence how I treat other people. So it's really got a very more rich internal and between kind of framework for those of us that like to think like that as a therapist rather than
Fascinating.
only in the individual or only between people. So anyway, it's a long answer, but
Okay. Okay. So I want to share the conceptualization that's sort of formulating as you speak in my mind, and I'd like you to share with me whether this is the case, whether I'm okay. And just before we do that, I just want to remind everybody that tonight's show is sponsored by OKclarity.com, where you can feature yourself and your practice. And take a look at OKclarity.com. You can put your own website on their site. They'll feature you and promote what you do best. And of course, by OfficeStreamline.com, or for Streamline is a service that has virtual secretaries, someone who can take care of your secretarial work so that you can spend more time doing the clinical work that you love to do. So take a look at them and let's sit back and enjoy the show. Understanding this correctly or not, but in more classical forms of family therapy. So let's think structural family therapy and Mnuchin. Many of us have gotten to see some of his work because it's online, and we enjoy his interventions and interactions with
Brilliant.
people. He was great at it. But it seems that, again, I think what you're saying is that it seems that most of his focus was coming through a perception or conceptualization of what a family system ought to look like and trying to create a shift in what happens. So if you have parentification, or if you have scapegoating, or if you have children who are sort of in charge and the parents are becoming the children, he wants to step up that the parents should be the parents should be the one disciplining, the parents should be the one supporting, and the child should redevelop into that role of child. Let's just say, for instance. But what perhaps he's not doing, and you're focusing on, again, from what I'm understanding, is more intricate in the specific kinds of interactions between parents or parent and child to ensure that those interactions make the child feel secure, safe, and all the things that attachment does. So Mnuchin's looking to restructure the family system and put everybody in the proper puzzle piece place. And he's asserting that that will create calm and serenity in the family. And you're adding to that we also need to be mindful of how the interactions themselves take place so that the child doesn't feel, let's just say, criticized. You can restructure a family, but be very critical in how you do it, or very nasty in how you do it, right? Or you can restructure a family system, and you can do it in a way that promotes pro-social behavior, positive feelings, positive self-esteem. Is that what you're adding?
Definitely one dimension to it. I mean, even for Haley and Mnuchin, they were sort of anti-emotion. They thought emotions are just getting in the way of therapy and don't go down that road. And whereas for us, not and very much like emotion focused therapy, we really believe this is a doorway into much deeper material and deeper functioning in people, and a domain that we want to enter and explore and understand better. The way that I'm sure many people here, and we come at it from a different angle, do individual adult psychotherapy. It sounds, Moishe, like you have a wide practice and see adults and individuals. And my guess is anybody working with young adults, 50% of the time you're talking about their parents. What I got, what I didn't got, how angry I still am. When I go to their house for dinner, they still treat me this way or that way. And that family relationships have become internalized. The dilemmas that I'm treating my wife just like I was treated by my father. That we've internalized these relational patterns. So in adult therapy, we're trying to uh, work through, come to understanding, see things more perspective. Great work. But we're not changing. The truth is, when the person goes home and calls his dad on the phone, his dad's still critical and dismissive and rejecting and unforgiving. So if we think about Good Will Hunting, right? We've all seen Good Will Hunting. And it's a great, who wouldn't want to be in therapy with Robin Williams? So authentic, so direct, sharing of himself, maybe too much in some ways, but really creates an authentic relational opportunity for this kid. And at the end, he leans in and says, he knocks on this boy's attachment schema mask and says, "It wasn't your fault." And the kid's like, "Oh, shut up. Of course it was my fault." He's saying I blame myself. That's why I don't feel like I can trust anybody. And just going to be a janitor. And he's saying, it wasn't your fault. It wasn't your fault. And finally has a kind of epiphany and breakthrough to, what his self-image he's been carrying around and how he understands what his father did to him, and has a great, jumps in a car and drives to Stanford to follow his love. We'd all love to have that happen in our patients. In our work in ABFT, I'd have the father come in and have the father say by week 10, if you can believe that, "It wasn't your fault. I was depressed. Mom left us. I should never have treated you that way." And that there's something more profound about the father saying that at two levels, penetrates more deeply the validation for the kid, and presents an opportunity that the next time the kid goes to dad's house for dinner, dad's a little softer.
Mhm.
Dad's current behavior has changed.
I
So
mu-
we're,
tremendously relieving for the child to, number one, hear from his father, this wasn't about you,
yeah,
and take off a tremendous burden and really create a shift in the personal self-image that the
yeah,
child has. And in addition, this is a corrective experience, not just on the from the vantage point of the child, but from the father having been able to, number one, get that off his chest,
yeah,
number two, see his child's reaction, and number three, be able to get vulnerable in a way that he was never vulnerable
hmm,
before,
hmm,
must have a tremendous impact in the future of the father's ability to
yeah,
be more gentle and soft. There must be a breakthrough in there.
yeah. And we do enough work with the parents. And in our work, you may not like this, but in our work, the parent is as much our patient as the kid. We see the parent as having their own trauma history, having their own attachment failures, replicating their own destructive intergenerational patterns of how they love and protect. And we're helping, we're saying to parents, you haven't described the structure of the work, but we're a meeting alone with parents and helping them remember what it was like when they were 11
Mhm.
and dad wasn't there for them, or mom was too depressed to be available, and helping access their own disappointments. And we use that as leverage then to say, I wonder if your daughter feels the same way.
Mhm.
You didn't intend it. You don't want her to, of course. You're a loving, committed parent, but it's just sort of turned out that you're sort of doing to your daughter exactly what was done to you. How tragic.
And I wonder if that's how you address resistance that parents, sometimes there's resistance from the parents' end to get vulnerable with the child. The resistance might present in the form of, well, I'm the parent and they're the child, and shouldn't they have to respect me? Or
Yeah,
maybe some other form of resistance. I'm getting the sense that empathy and reflection that you use with the parent will help in some way to break through that resistance.
yeah, definitely. We have a lot of levers, we say, that we pull to try to get the parents in a more empathic, attuned way. Some is empathy for their own disappointments in life.
Mhm.
Some are uh, appreciation for how hard their life is, sort of current stressors, we say, like, of course you're not able to take care of Johnny. You're depressed, working two jobs, you got a husband that beats you. I mean, give yourself a break. I'm not saying it's good, but I'm just putting it in perspective. So we sometimes come at it that way to try to reduce defensiveness. And the overriding spirit that comes out of attachment theory is all parents have an instinct to be a good parent.
Mm.
They want to be a good parent. Their intention is to be a good parent. In the same way, attachment, from Bowlby's point of view, is an instinct. The tiger comes outside the cave. The kid doesn't say, what should I do? Maybe I should go pet him. Maybe. No, there's an instinct of fear and that mom or dad's going to protect me. And I run to mom and hide behind her skirt and hope that she will stop the tiger from getting me. Bowlby talks about this as an instinct, not as a conscious choice. And in the same way, parents have that instinct. They're watching their kid ride their bike in front of the house, and the kid starts to fall, and the parent is off the stoop down the street and catches the kid before he hits the ground. And we always speak to that part of the parent. I know things aren't going well. I know there's a lot of conflict, but I know you love this kid. I know you care about this kid. You wouldn't be here if you didn't. It's just tragic that sometimes the way you show love to your kid doesn't quite get through. But we're always trying to pitch and enter into understanding and challenge through a belief that you want to be a good parent. I know
So in
you
other
do.
words, there's a place that you're connecting with the parent that resonates with them.
Yeah,
And through that resonance, you can build something
yeah,
great. Beautiful. And
yeah.
and I
And
assume you would do this with the child,
they
with the
come to
child.
therapy expecting to be blamed.
Yes.
That's just what
So
we.
so it's not sufficient to say what many therapists say, you may not be the problem, but you're certainly part of the solution. That may be
Yeah,
true, but it's not adequate. You want to touch them where they really feel it.
yeah, yeah. We say that, but then we do some work with them to make them feel it, not just an aphorism. But yeah, we say, you know, they want medication. Give this kid more drugs. He needs more drugs, and we say, you are the medicine that we need, not more Zoloft.
Hmm.
Or maybe we do need more Zoloft, but without your medicine of love and protection, that Zoloft's never going to work. Something like that.
Got it. Guy, uh, I just, first of all, I want to just announce to everybody, for those of you who have any questions or would like to share, please click the raise hand bottom on the bottom, the raise hand tab on the bottom of your screen, and we'll be happy to take your questions or comments. But Guy, I think a lot of what you just described is shown very eloquently in the presentation video that you have for us.
Mm-hmm.
So why don't we segue right into that, and
Okay.
let's take a look at I guess a mock session,
Yeah.
although you might not be able to tell it's a mock session.
We hope not. So, what is the first task, the first job of a family therapist? Mom calls and says, I'm bringing Johnny. I'll drop him at 3 and I'll be back at 4. And the family therapist, in some way, has to say, Mom, what? Maybe you should come in for a minute. Maybe you could help me get to know Johnny, and maybe I could help you figure out some ways to manage this better. And a lot of parents say, "What? Are you saying I'm the problem?" And no, no, no. Of course, you're the medicine. You're not the problem. I need you anyway. You all have your strategies for how to win a parent over to be part of their therapy. So we have sort of operationalized our thinking about this in our first session. And the basic structure of it is we, as any of you would, we do some joining as, hi, how are you? Where do you work? Did you find parking okay? We use that joining to find out some details about their life, any family around, any health problems, what's Johnny good at? It's not just chit chat, it's getting the lay of the land. We then go into, let's say, for 40 minutes, if I was going to put structure around it. Why are you here? What brought you here? Because you've got to take these problems seriously. Tell me about the suicide. Tell me about the school problems. Tell me about the medication. Tell me about, and we do our 40-minute intake as any of you would. And how long and when was that? And how's it going at home when he gets like this? What do you guys do? We ask about parental teamwork in our intake. So do you two agree on how you handle these things, or is there difference of opinions on what to do? And inevitably, there's usually conflict between the parents. You're too soft. Well, you're too hard. And I punctuate that, as Mnuchin would say, and say, when I meet alone with you guys next week, we're gonna talk about that more. So I bring it up. I don't delve into it because it's the first session and I don't know people yet. But then we make a shift, and it's a very intentional shift. And this is what the video is going to be. We say, look, this has really been helpful getting to know you. Sounds like things have been really hard. What I'm really interested in is Johnny, and this comes out of our suicide work, when you're in your room upstairs thinking about hurting yourself, and you got that razor blade, and your parents are downstairs watching TV, why don't you go to them for help? What's happened to the attachment switch? Why don't you say, Mom, I'm hurting. Can you protect me? And that shifts the therapy from the behavior problems, the history problems, the diagnostic problems to the relationship problems. What's happened here that's making it difficult for you guys to be good parents and take care of this kid? Must break your heart that he didn't come to you. So I go to kid, maybe I get an answer, maybe I don't. I turn to the parents and say, must terrify you, must disappoint you so much that he did. I know you're mad, I know you're frustrated, I know it's been difficult, but on this little point, it must be so disappointing. Here you are, a great parent, concerned, caring, and this kid almost killed himself, and you didn't even know about it. Can only imagine how scared you were. And here we're trying to talk about vulnerable emotions. I don't say you must have been so angry and this is pissed off and I don't talk about that. I talk about you were afraid to lose him. You were afraid he might die. You really love this kid, don't you? And when they say yes, I turn to Billy and say, Billy, did you know she still loves you? And suddenly the therapy is about love and
Mhm.
commitment and connection rather than what are we going to do about the medication? How are we going to get you to treatment? And I had engineered a conversation about attachment. I don't use that language, but Johnny, did you know she misses you? No, she never says anything like that, really. Maybe as a structural therapist, I turn to mom and say, Mom, why don't you turn to Johnny right now? Remind him how much you care about him. And mom turns ideally and says, Well, what are you talking about? Of course I care. And kid says, Well, it never feels like it. And mom says, this is not good. I love you. And I know I get, and suddenly they're talking about love. And for me, there are big problems behind this. I'm just setting up the video. You know, why don't you go to mom? When my parents divorced, my dad abandoned me, and mom won't even. I miss my dad so much, and I can't talk to mom about it because she's so angry at him. Grandma died 6 months ago, and we never talk about it. Nobody's helping me through that. Mom's been depressed all her life. I can't go to her. She's so unreliable. These sort of bigger themes might come out, might not. Kids might say, I don't know, I don't want to talk about it. But all I need in that first session is, I can see how angry you are. I can see how difficult this is. But I also see how much you miss your mom. And mom, I see how much you miss your kid.
So you're
Without
looking
me,
to create an in vivo emotional vulnerability in which the parties can begin to look beyond the content and begin to experience the emotion and the affect and the underlying truth.
yeah,
It sounds
exactly.
like like it'd be great for couples as well.
Yeah,
Hmm.
right.
Okay.
And for me, where I land in that first session is, look, there's a lot that's going on here, and I don't claim to know it all yet. But what's clear is you two have lost touch with each other. And here's our sell. I would like to focus this therapy on helping you two be more connected. We'll deal with school, we'll get to the marijuana use, but for me, the first thing to do is to help you two feel more like a team. Would you like to work on that in therapy? And I try to get a relational contract. The old days of making a contract for therapy, has been bastardized by the insurance companies, because now the contract is the depression score on the BDI will go down 5 points every week. All right, that's our contract. That's what you write on the form. When you really want to say is, you two are going to figure out why you don't love each other. That's what I want to work on and get some level of agreement. So with that said, and unless you want to, Moisha, if you want to say any more about that, I'll put the tape on.
Oh, let's jump right into the tape.
So two things to say, as Moisha alluded to. This is a training tape. These are actors, real cases, but actors. We've also built the tape so it's 7 minutes long, because we're trying to just demonstrate different skills. We're not trying to show you what would this look like if you were doing it. So this 7 minute conversation might be 40 minutes or 20 minutes long. So the therapist is moving a little more quickly than you might, but we're just using this to teach skills, not so. Before everybody starts screaming about the insensitivity of the therapist, we always warn you. This segment starts about 45 minutes into the session. I've done joining. I've done all the problem definite, how bad, and how bad was the suicide, and how many pills, and who took him to the hospital, and how are you handling it at home, and is he back at school, and how is school going, and probation's involved. When did that? We did all that as much as we could in 40 minutes. And now I'm shifting to, how's the relationship going? What's getting in the way of the relationship? Yep.
Now that I have a better sense of who you guys are a little bit and generally what's going on in your life, I do want to now shift to getting a better understanding of why you guys are here today.
Yep. Wrong
So
tape.
James, I'm wondering.
That's That's the history taking tape.
So here you are, James, feeling all alone, worthless, sometimes even hopeless, and maybe using the drugs a little bit to numb that pain. I'm wondering, when you are in all that pain and struggling at school and all these things are happening, why aren't you going to your parents for help?
I feel like they really just don't get it.
Is really our first obstacle. All alone,
Sorry about that.
worthless, sometimes even hopeless, and maybe using the drugs a little bit to numb that pain. I'm wondering, when you are in all that pain and struggling at school and all these things are happening, why aren't you going to your parents for help?
I feel like they really just don't get me.
Tell me more about that.
I mean, they didn't even tell me when they found out that we were moving.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they waited like a few months or something to let me know, and by then it was too late to tell half my friends goodbye because they were already on vacation.
Yeah, so you feel like they don't get you around the move, and it sounds like maybe even since then, when you've been struggling with things, do you also feel like they haven't gotten you? That they don't understand what you're going through? So it's almost that you can't even maybe trust that they're going to be able to help you if they don't understand what you're dealing with. Would you say that's the case?
Yeah.
How about for you guys, Jennifer? What do you think about what James is saying about not understanding him?
Well, I want to understand him. I admit I don't understand the drugs.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to understand him, but he doesn't talk to me like he used to.
Yeah. So you really have that desire to understand and know what's going on, but there's something happening here that he won't come to you.
Yeah, we used to be close, but not anymore. He won't spend time with me. He won't talk to me.
And how about you, Henry? What do you think about James saying that he doesn't come to you because he feels like you don't understand him?
I'm right. I don't understand him, man. I worked hard to provide a good life for him, and certainly a better life than I had growing up.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I don't understand why he's upset.
And I can get that. You really worked hard to provide a really good life for your family.
The boys do miss you. You know, we talk about you getting to, go to more games and do more things with them, and you just never seem to make time on your schedule.
Yeah. So it sounds like there's, Mom, that you're saying that there is a lot of space where Dad isn't able to be there. Is that how it feels like for you, James?
Yeah.
Yeah. So then you had to sit with all that pain alone. And I wonder, you said you kind of felt lonely in school and out in the world because you were having difficulty making friends. I also wonder if you were feeling lonely at home. So on top of it all, you're feeling lonely in the house too. And that's just adding to your pain.
Yeah, I mean, I really feel like I can't go talk to them about anything.
Mom, I saw you shaking your head. What's that like for you to hear?
It just breaks my heart. I feel like I failed as a mother. I don't want him to be sad. I want him to be happy and have a good life, and that's what we were trying to do.
Yeah. You really love your son.
I do.
I'm wondering, for you, Henry, what is it like for you to know that kind of James is feeling all alone? Part of the reason because he can't come to you.
I mean, I've always thought I was a pretty good father, certainly a good provider. But I don't know, maybe I'm not as good a caregiver, whatever you call it.
Wow, that's really a hard thing to do, and a really brave thing to do. I'm wondering, James, what is that like for you to hear your father say that maybe he's not the best caregiver?
I mean, I've never heard him admit that before. I mean, it's not like that I ever said that you were like a bad father or that, you didn't take care of us.
I mean, I'm not Superman, I mean, I've had my doubts about this move as well,
So for you, Henry, you really, you're not sure everything was right, but it's clear, I guess what I hear from there is you really love your son. But I also, I see, I mean, it seems like, James, you don't really know your dad that well.
I mean, I thought I did, but I guess not.
And I also really, I mean, the way you just defended your dad here, I also, even though you're really angry with both of them and what's happened, I feel how much you actually love your dad too. And maybe even admire him.
I do.
But there's been such a disconnect between you guys. And I'm wondering if, do you want your son to know you better and to know your son better?
Of course I would, yeah.
Can you tell him that?
Well, I love you, James, right? You're my son. I want to know you better.
What's that like to hear from your dad?
I mean, it's nice to hear.
Do you want to know your dad better too?
Yeah.
And have him know you better? And Mom, what's that like for you to see that?
It's what I've longed for. I mean, I know they love each other, but they just never seem to be able to connect.
And it seems like everybody in this family has really been disconnected for the past year. And that's really what I want to help you guys with. I want to, I know there's a lot to work on. There's a lot of school issues and there's the drug issues, but I really see that this disconnection is really our first obstacle to tackle. That this disconnection is really preventing you guys from being able to help James, and James, you being able to go to them for help. In order for James to get better, the first thing we need to work on is getting you guys connected again, helping you guys know each other and reconnecting you. Is that something that you guys can agree to?
Oh, for me, absolutely.
How about you, Henry?
Well, I mean, if you think this is the right way to go, then yeah, of course.
And how about you, James?
Yeah.
That's wonderful to hear. I know that if we can get all of you guys connected again, which we will, that we're going to help get James feeling better and addressing all of the concerns that all of you guys have.
Wow. Sometimes, Guy, you can watch a session and try to understand the intricacies and wisdom and intervention behind it, and sometimes you can just feel it. This is the kind of intervention that I'm sure we can break down because you had already kind of preempted and we understood what was happening. But I think more importantly, you can actually feel it, which is probably the parallel effect that this is having on the client's system, that they can feel that there's something being bred, there's something being cultivated here. I'm wondering if anybody else has any impressions after watching this video. And if you do, please raise your hand. Any thoughts? The Guy, you're muted still. Sorry. Go ahead.
I was just making a joke there. This probably looks totally familiar to all of them. They're doing this all the time.
Well, I actually appreciate this work very, very much. And I think that I, this really resonates with me that at the core of family systems work is really the ability to look at each other.
Mhm.
And so much of what goes on, if we're really paying attention, is that nobody's really looking into each other's eyes. At best, they're glaring at each other. If they're even making eye contact, they're glaring at each other. It's a fight. And
Yeah,
here you're finding a common language that everybody speaks, which is the desire to be connected. And
yeah,
that really seems to transcend everything else. And like
yeah,
hurting, so many things will fall away. I like how she says, or you said, I think we should first focus on the relationship, on getting to know each other, and then we can talk about the behaviors. Where in reality, when we first focus on the relationship, many of those behaviors will dissipate on their own.
yeah, definitely.
Okay.
One of the things that often comes up, and when you see more of the work, um, is how quickly we focus on this inner dilemma of attachment. So here in the very first session, I'm trying to get to love and teamwork and connection and making that the theme of the work initially. And because of that, because even when after this, we split up the parent and the kid and meet with the kid 3 or 4 times and parent 3 or 4 times and do a lot of individual work and preparation before we bring them back together to kind of have this conversation again at a deeper level, more persistence, more thorough level, or get at some of the other themes that haven't been uncovered. And we do this in like 10 weeks because we're very intentfully focused on it. A lot of people watch our work and say, "Oh, I do just what you do, Guy.
Mhm,
It
mhm.
just takes me 6 months."
So what are you doing more or more focused that is intentional?
Yeah. So two things. One, we are a bit more directive. They come in, they want to talk about this and this and that. We say, that's really important, but I wonder if first we could think about this a little bit. And then our conversations are focused on these inner dilemmas. So for the kid, among other things, we have this framework called the attachment narrative. I don't know if anybody here has ever done an AAI interview, but we sort of use an AAI kind of framework to do therapy. When you were young and you were a kid and mom and dad were beating each other up, who did you go to? Who did you turn to? So we put attachment at the center of the conversation and say, let's talk about that. Let's, and after that, it's open and complex and, individualized, but we try to put attachment at the center rather than wait for it to come around or let's focus on school for a few weeks or, I mean, not that we don't discuss school, but we keep attachment at the center. We're building towards task 4 where we want the kid to come back and say, Mom, I've never told you this, but your depression has really been a burden on me. And the kid, rather than going in his room and cutting himself, has language, has access to his feelings, says, I feel really lonely. I feel really lost. I feel, can say the things he feels rather than internalize them. And the parent, because of the work we've done in task 3, says, I'm not, rather than talking about myself or crumbling in guilt, guys, help me see I got to listen to you. I got to be your secure base. I had no idea you were this upset. Tell me more. And that task 4 encounter is a corrective attachment experience, just like you said, Moishe. It's just kids going to come and talk about pain, and parents going to be there. And we're propping parents up. Mom, remember what we said. This isn't about you today. Oh, all right. Just ask him questions and pay attention. Mom, you don't have to defend yourself. All right, all right. Because we've done all this prep work with mom.
Yes. Yes.
So she's ready to try to say, okay, I'll give it a try. And we help her be available and sensitive parent, and we help the kid talk about what's on their mind rather than collapse or have a temper tantrum.
So I feel like the concept of contracting uh, um, is so vital to this process, because once we've contracted that we're going to do something different, that we're going to learn how to interact differently,
Yeah.
that we've made mistakes, it isn't going right, and something different has to happen, then people seem to become so much more agreeable to back off when they start going in the wrong direction. They're redirected by the therapist or by the family member. And it makes the process so much smoother.
Yeah. And they go back on their word. They say yes to the contract, and then 2 weeks later, a crisis hits, but exactly right. That's why we try to lay that down in the first session. Like, when you work with me, this is the way we're going to go for a while. This is my prescription. If you don't like it, you're welcome to go down the street to the CBT therapist and, do that work. But if you're going to work with me, I'm a healer of the soul. And I'm going to a different place than some of your past therapies. There are no star charts on the refrigerator in my work.
Hmm.
We're going after some of the deepest, darkest things that have torn this family up.
Guy,
So,
if people want to learn more about ABFT, is
yeah,
trainings is the place to go, the abftinternational.com website.
yeah, yep. Go to that website.
Where are some of the live trainings conducted?
Well, a lot of the trainings since COVID are now online. So twice a year we do an intro training. It's a 3-day workshop. We do it online. People seem to love it. We get people from Turkey and China and Australia and Europe, and it's been great. It's been a great innovation. And then if people want to continue, we have supervision groups that go on for like 26 sessions kind of over the course of a year, and 4 people come together and present cases. And then we have an advanced workshop if people want to go the next step. And after that, you get certified as a level 2 ABFT therapist. And then there's a level 3 if you want to do tape review. You record some of your work, send it to us. We do a line by line analysis. Yeah, like you used to in grad school. Some of you remember, that kind of. So there's definitely a whole training program and sequence for those that you can get on the bus and get off the bus any place you want. And
Nice.
but so there's a lot of opportunities for
Guy,
more training.
would you do family therapy or attachment-based family therapy with adult children, adult families? Do you find that to be more difficult because of the old patterns, or is the
Yeah,
sort of
yeah. I mean, it can go both ways. The patterns are ingrained and the personalities are ingrained, and they're just a tougher sell. I also find when mom and dad are 70, they're feeling like
interesting?
we can't go on another 10 years like this. We love this kid, and we want him to come home for Shabbos dinner, and he hates us, and we're gonna work through this together. And I'm finishing a case now. The kid is 45, dad's 75. The kid's been harboring this resentment towards his dad for 20 years, and used the same structure. Got together. Actually, I didn't do a task 1 with them because I'd been working with the kid alone. And then we decided to bring Dad in, but I met alone with Dad and kind of got him on board with the contract and did some skill building and then brought them together. And Dad said, you know, I'll do anything to have a connection with you again.
Cool.
So tell me what it is. Tell me the things I've done wrong. I'm willing to, I know I'm not perfect, and let's have it out. Let's have a big thing. Gary Diamond, good colleague who's helped develop this work, has done a lot of this work with adult LGBTQ families. So the son is 28 and wants to get married, wants to invite his mom to the wedding. They come to ABFT. He's doing this work in Israel. A lot of religious families that are where the parents just can't get past their moral and religious values about homosexuality.
Mhm.
Doing some great work there. So.
Fascinating. Well, Guy, I want to really thank you for doing this and for informing our crowd about what's out there. To me, this is something that's near and dear to my heart. Having, practicing family therapy and couples, and really valuing the sort of backhanded effect that rather than targeting something so directly, to really be able to target what's really going on affectively, and to do it in vivo and experientially, just seems to me, really talks to my heart, and I find it to be highly effective. So appreciate sharing, and everybody, please take a look at the abftinternational.com website for the trainings and for more information and resources. Thank you very, very much.
Thanks for having me, Moishe. Let's plan to do something else together. This has been really fun.
Okay, be well.
I can tell you're a kindred spirit.
Thank you so much.
All right, folks. Any thoughts?
Yeah, I'll jump in. Maisha, wow, thank you for getting such a great guest. And yeah, I wish he was live so I could tell him personally how much I appreciate him.
Get him live. Maybe we'll get him.
Yeah, because he just seems he scratched the surface. I I trained, I did a really good MFT program, and I learned so much. And I love the way he just went from cybernetics to the founders and then the postmodern. But one thing that bothered me in my program is we didn't really talk about attachment. And like right after I finished the program, I was like, I got into attachment and I said, this has to be integrated. But that was just feeling, and he really put it into words and clearly has such experience. So thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, he's great. Any other thoughts? Okay. Well, good night, everybody. Hope to see you next week on a different topic completely. Okay, thanks for joining.